of you who are visiting for the very first time, welcome to our church where we worship and praise God every Sunday here. So please come out and join us then if you're interested in attending with us for worship service. My name is Reverend Banks. I am on the ministerial staff here. Our pastor, Reverend West, is going to come forward and welcome us and lead us in prayer.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the W. That's how we frame it here affectionately. We're so glad to have you, and we're so glad to have two candidates here. And I believe another will be joining us, and one had a detour of some sort. But we're glad for those who are here, and we're excited about being here tonight for talking about our district and making sure that we don't want to just maintain the standard that we have, but we want to be innovators and do some great things and set a standard for our county. So it's so good to have you out tonight to show interest in what goes on in this district, to make sure we continue to excel, and so glad to have you here on tonight to share your vision for District number 6. Good to see you again, our moderator for tonight. But let us begin, as always, with prayer. Gracious and kind God, we thank you again for another opportunity, oh God, where we can come and we can just join ideas, hear thoughts and vision, where we can make sure that all that is being done in this district for this county is done according to your will. So God, impart in us tonight the wisdom to be able to hear your divine plan through your divine instruments, and give our candidates, God, tonight the insight and the words to speak, that they would draw this community together and be able to be on one accord as we move forward according to a plan that we cannot see, but one that we can believe. God, we just give it all to you and ask you to take charge of all persons who you have assigned to be here tonight, to lead us tonight. And God, we will give you all the glory and honor. Holy Spirit, now have your way. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Pastor West. So we are about to begin our forum now, and we're grateful to have two of the several candidates who are running for the District 6 seat. And so our moderator will introduce them in a moment, but in just a moment, we're going to introduce our moderator. This is Mr. Spencer Bryant. He is a respected and well-known radio personality. He regularly covers regional politics around the DMV. Spencer began his career behind a microphone in the voice acting industry before moving into public radio at WYPR in Baltimore, where he was an on-air host for All Things Considered and Weekend Edition, as well as a senior producer for several award-winning productions. Spencer is also a licensed historical guide in the D.C. region, including Arlington National Cemetery. Born and raised in Maryland, Spencer is a graduate of the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, where he studied journalism and history. Spencer is also a proud member of Phi Beta Sigma. We anticipate that Spencer will moderate an informative and wonderful forum. So thank you all so much for coming, and on to you, Spencer.
You guys excuse me, I've been on the air all day long, so if my voice sounds a little hoarse, apologies in advance. The Supreme Court decision that got handed down today has been the big news. So then there were two. Are we expecting a third? Okay. Well, pressure's on y'all too right now. So you guys have 90 seconds to open statements, introduce yourself, all that. So I'll leave it to you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Joel R. Peebles, Jr. I am your candidate for District 6, Prince George's County Council. Just to give you a little bit of information about myself, although I'm 31 years old, I've accumulated about 15 years of legislative experience expanding all three levels of government here in the United States of America. That began in the House of Representatives under Catherine Clark as a policy and communications intern. That would then transfer over to the Maryland General Assembly under Senator Anthony Muse, where I then worked as a legislative intern there. Afterwards, I opened up the Underwood Consulting Firm, a lobbying and development consulting firm, as well as a nonprofit that focused on civic engagement. I then went and served in the county council for 3 years, where I did a number of positions, including legislative officer and chief of staff. Chief of staff is the highest position you can have for a non-elected official in a county council's office. And then the legislative officer is actually the position that writes, drafts, and researches the bills for the council members. What I am saying to you is that I have the experience to make sure that District 6 has a person in that seat that can fight for you from beginning to end, that can see your development through, that can make sure our county code is structured in a way that it works for you, to make sure that our county agencies have the proper writing within the legislation to make sure they know how to enact and enforce those laws. And I'm here to tell you that as your candidate for District 6, I am ready on day one to take this experience and make it work for you. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm looking forward to answering all of your questions.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is Dominique Lamb, and as you know, I'm running to represent you on the Prince George's County Council. And I want to start by saying that I'm not running because I'm interested in a fancy title. We have plenty of titles. I'm running because I've been in the rooms, some of the rooms that Joel just mentioned, with our congressional leaders, with our state leaders, with people that we have empowered to represent us. And what I found often is that I'm the only one in the room who has the answer to the most pressing issues, whether I'm sitting there with the person that we've elected or their staff members. And I think that we're ready for something different, right? I've gone through a process, a personal process, to become ready to stand in those positions with the information that I have and to serve as an elected official as opposed to a public servant who's not elected. And so I want to remind us that we're starting to see this trickle around the country of people who are doing the work and not just looking the part, right? We're starting to see that in New York, in Virginia, in Chicago, in Baltimore. And so I look forward to, one, earning your vote, but two, having the opportunity to bring the vision, the leadership, the integrity, the accountability, and the transparency that's been missing from the room in the county council. Thank you.
All right, folks, first thing on the menu tonight is education. So, Prince George's County Public Schools have historically ranked near the bottom in Maryland. Recent reports show that the district is still scoring below the adequate threshold and ranking among the lowest performing systems in the state, despite some recent improvement. What specific measurable actions will you take to improve academic outcomes, teacher quality, accountability, and student transportation? And how will you ensure those changes actually translate into better results for students within the next 3 to 5 years?
So you all don't know this, but we didn't know the questions beforehand. So you are getting things right off the cuff. For education, I'm a proud PGCPS graduate. I went to Suitland High School, and when I was 15, I was noticing that our programs were being cut, and it was always because there wasn't enough money. And now, Joel said he's 31, I'm 39, 20 plus years later, come on, Melanin, 20 plus years later, we're still cutting programs because we don't have funding. We're not able to retain and attract quality teachers. We have amazing teachers, but we're not able to compete with the other counties that are nearby, with Washington, D.C. and Northern Virginia, because we don't have the budget. We don't have stable sources of revenue in our county so that we can keep those teachers in our classrooms. We're not able to provide them with their planning periods. So these are the sorts of things that I would do to improve student outcomes, because one, we need to address our teacher quality and our retention. In terms of student transportation, I think that's another thing that relies heavily on, do we have the budget? And what we see right now, currently, I know that I wish I was already on the council to address cutting $150 million from our education budget, right? Using education to close our deficit for 1 year. So those are the kinds of things that I would reverse in order to address many of the education issues that we have.
I think the key phrase in that is budget. First, to understand the county council's role in education. Unfortunately, the county council does not have the power to actually go in and change anything within the Board of Education for Prince George's County. What we do have, though, is the power to pass the budget that will be allocated to the Prince George's County Prince George's County public school system. And within that, there are Maryland state laws that prohibit us from giving too low in terms of what we've given based on other years prior in our fiscal year budget. So right on the head, hitting the nail on the head, the budget is the biggest thing that we can do as county council members to make sure we reinforce Prince George's County public school system. But what does that look like? I personally think that we need a whole culture overhaul when it comes to Prince George's County public school systems. When you venture out into other jurisdictions, and I, as a policy head, I always use other jurisdictions as a litmus test to see what we do wrong, what we do right, and how we can fix it. Other jurisdictions have a pride in their school where, like if you look in some jurisdictions in Texas, their property taxes are tied directly to their public school system. And there's a community of individuals who want to pay higher property taxes. Now, I don't want my community to have to pay higher property taxes, but what I do know is that we have to get involved as individuals when it comes to the way that our Prince George's County public school system is enacting some of their policies, and make sure that they understand that there needs to be a cultural shift. Here on the county council, I pledge to you as your District 6 representative that I will do everything that I can to make sure that we give as much funding to education as possible, but we have to address the baseline cost. The fact that right now our main sources of revenue in our budget, the main sources of revenue in our budget are property taxes and personal income tax. We have to revamp all of those things while we're changing the trajectory and the culture of our schools. And as your District 6 constituent, or council member, I'm gonna make sure that we go ahead and give as much money, but then give that cultural support that the schools really need.
All right, affordable housing. Many residents believe there is a lack of affordable housing in Prince George's County. Do you agree? And if so, how do you plan to address it?
So affordable housing is something that we actually have to be more upfront with our community about when it comes to us being elected officials, right? A number of constituents are not happy with the number of townhomes that are going up. However, what most council members haven't been telling their constituents prior to this is that the number of roofs go into the type of development that we bring here. Business owners who want to bring their developments here wants to know that there is enough income in those areas from the people who live there, and there are enough people there to support those businesses. And so as we're putting up some of these homes, some of them may be more affordable or some of them may be less affordable, we have to address one cause, and that is what are we looking to bring into the community? But while we are shooting to bring in high dining restaurants, while we are shooting to make sure we're bringing in the infrastructure and the development we need, we also do need to make sure that our community is livable. And so when it comes to making sure we have more affordable housing, we need to make sure that these developers have incentives that say, hey, if you build housing that may not be the best benefit to you but is beneficial for the community, we will make sure we follow you up on the other hand when it comes to some of the other projects. But we need to make sure we hold these developers accountable and let them know that when it comes to our development, the more you invest into our community, the more we will then turn back around and invest into your business to stay in Prince George's County.
So this is going to be my favorite question of the night. I own a real estate brokerage, and I'm licensed in 5 states, and I can tell you that in none of those states has building more housing and creating more inventory made housing more affordable. There are a lot of politicians who want you to believe that this is a simple economics equation. If we build more supply, price will go down. I can tell you that that's not true, because as you see these new townhouse developments spring up, you see the prices start at $700,000, right? They never have brought the price down. And what happens is if you live nearby and you have an existing home, you now base your value, your property value, on that new community. Instead, we have artificial demand. And so what that means is that we have affordability covenants that aren't honored, right? So the people find legal loopholes to be able to charge market rate for housing that we have subsidized to be affordable. We have wholesalers who will go and take advantage of the people that own their homes and that technically have affordable housing. Because they don't have the knowledge of what they own, they lose that affordable housing to the wholesaler. So we have a lot of unchecked artificial demand, which is why it's not a simple economics equation. It's not just supply and demand. And so we need to address affordability, and we keep hearing there's a crisis. It's not a crisis when it's chronic, right? This has been going on forever. So what we need to do to address the affordability aspect of it is address why we have certain communities that are without the funding that they need to stay in their homes. Not how do we make homes cost less? How do we make sure that the people who live in this community can afford to live in this community? And so that's something that I'm extremely passionate about and looking forward to bringing as your District 6 council member.
Yes, I always love driving through the community, and I see residential communities with signs that say starting in the low 900s. It's always interesting. All right, so economic growth. This is kind of a two-part question. So how would you encourage economic growth in the county? So that's first. Second question is, with that, do you believe the sphere is good for PG County?
Okay, so let me answer the second question because that's an easy answer. No, I don't think that that's good for the county. See me after so I can have more than 90 seconds to explain why that's not good for the county. What I would do to spur economic growth in the county is twofold. One, I would address the reason that a lot of retailers and fine dining and hotels, their concerns about bringing locations to our county. Some of them are racist. We can't overcome that. But some of them have valid concerns. What we tend to do in this county is think that it's okay for there to be the haves and the have-nots. And they see that, right? When they're saying that we need a certain level of income or a certain level of education, as people who are in charge of governing the county, there's an opportunity to say, well, how do we increase everyone's income? How do we give more opportunities for people to increase their education? How do we address those very real concerns to make it a no-brainer for whatever retailer we're trying to attract to come to the county? So that's number one, is I would do the heavy lifting of addressing the root causes for why they're not coming. And then secondly, I would address the fact that if I've heard people mention Cheesecake Factory. If Cheesecake Factory won't come, I'll go to their competitor and I'll get them to come. I will leverage them against the person who won't come. There are a lot of different techniques and strategies other than just asking for someone to come and then taking no for an answer. So I think that we need more creativity. We need people who are more passionate about bringing these different economic centers to Prince George's County instead of just allowing them to continue to tell us no.
No, I think that hits right on the head in the sense of we have to, first of all, address the underlying issues. And for me, I've sat down with the Maryland Building Industry Association. I've sat down with AOBA. I've sat down with some of the developers and business owners in the community, and they'll all say that we have two main issues. The first one is just our overall development process going through DPI, the Department of Permanent Inspections and Enforcement, and then also the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission. You have to go through two different agencies who are separate to get your permits in order. Some of them take at least 30 days and even longer, and then there's not enough transparency in that application process. And even if there was a little bit more transparency, especially when it comes to these startup businesses, they're having a hard time tracking between where their applications are, what they're supposed to actually be reporting, and what things that they need to make sure that they're in compliance with our county and state code. We have to make sure that we clear that up and streamline that process so the application process is fluid. The second part about it is the district council process. What most people don't know is the county council has more than one function of sitting as a legislative body. It also sits as a zoning body within Prince George's County. The district council approves designated site plans within Prince George's County, so it approves what goes up where in what district on what street. And we have to make sure that within that process we take out the politics of it, make sure that there aren't individuals who can line their pockets up through these developments, but actually get involved and make sure that the right developments based on what our sector site plans are being put up. And that's another big thing. The third thing on that is that we have to make sure that our council-managed site plans and our community master plans are all aligned and in order. That way the council actually knows how to go into the district council process and see those plans into action. Now, when it comes to the sphere, I think that the sphere goes along with kind of data centers, some of the other things where we look at what I call—
That's actually the second part of the question. So.
Yes. Okay. Oh, were we not supposed to?
No,
Oh.
finish what you got to say about the
Perfect.
sphere, then we can go to about data centers.
Understood, yeah. So with the sphere, I see it as lazy development, the same way I see as data centers, the same way I see as, the MGM is a good project, but at the end of the day, these aren't things that employ our youth and young adults. These aren't things that bring our communities together. These aren't things that give us things to rally around and be proud around as a community. These are bright light, fascinating spectacles that you see only in Las Vegas, which has a completely different economic impact than Prince George's County does. We need to bring in businesses that bring in families together, that brand to all demographics, youth, young adults, seniors, anybody, families, single individuals, church communities, your neighborhood reading group. We need to make sure that we're bringing in amenities that actually brand to all of those individuals, and we have to be transparent with our books. And based on what I've seen in Las Vegas with the Sphere, I cannot say that we are doing that here in Prince George's County.
So you can speak your stance on data centers now. Yeah. Well, he kind of already spoke on it. Yeah.
So say the question one more time, I'm sorry.
So basically, this is the second part of that question. Do you believe data centers are good for PG County?
I don't. I think that one of the issues with data centers, again, is what I was mentioning about the haves and the have-nots. We're okay with putting a data center in Landover because we're okay with blighting Landover. We're okay with intentionally starving that community of resources. I grew up in Accokeek. I live in Bowie now, and I can tell you now that would never be proposed in Accokeek or Fort Washington or Bowie, right? It's because it's Landover. So I want to address the fact that it's that specific location where it's proposed. So I'm against that, but I'm also against data centers being in residential areas. I think that we don't have the infrastructure to support data centers in Prince George's County. I don't think that the constituents want data centers, but what I can say, because it looks like that decision might be made before I have an opportunity to weigh in as a council member, that if we do have data centers in Prince George's County, they should be in industrial parks. They should not be where residents live. And so I hope that the current county council and county executive do not move forward with data centers, but in the event that they do, we need to be paying attention to where they're being placed and what communities are impacted.
Sure.
The one thing that I do want to caveat with that, though, and I want to make my stance clear on if I am short-term no data centers or long-term no data centers. My answer right now is long-term no data centers. And the reason why is because, one, I agree we do not have the infrastructure. Our grid will not be able to hold in Prince George's County one, let alone multiple data centers. But then two, when we also look at the data centers, power prices have surged beyond belief right now. And it would be irresponsible for us as Prince George's County elected officials to build more data centers while we have other council members who are currently, who are fighting for data centers, but then on the other hand, trying to pass resolutions to go to the General Assembly to ask them what they can do to lower our power. They should have been involved 5, 6, 10, 15 years ago when those centers were going up in Northern Virginia. Now that those centers are in Northern Virginia, our prices have increased when it comes to power. Because if that data center is built on your energy provider's grid, your price will go up. Whether it's in North Virginia, Philadelphia, New Jersey, Maryland, wherever it is, if it's on your energy provider's grid, it will go up. So for me, aside from the environmental issues, for me, aside from the lazy development area, Power is also a major issue to me, and right now we have to go to the PMJ, we have to go to the public service commissions to fight for you guys every day to get that power price down, and adding more data centers is gonna do nothing but continue to let that rise, and on my watch, I would not see it as your District 6 County Council member.
All right, so going forward, since it's only 2 candidates, you guys have 2 minutes just to be extra, like 30 seconds. Yeah, so, all right. So you kind of already spoke on this briefly, the haves and the have-nots. Next question, a District 6 resident asks, there is a concern expressed regularly on social media platforms that Prince George's County operates based on who you know. Regular citizens who do not live in high-end neighborhoods or have certain connections feel overlooked and dismissed. Given the history of African Americans in this country, it's sad that we operate this way in our own county. Please address this concern.
So, Senators of the City is the nonprofit that I use for civic engagement. And in that capacity, what we do is not only teach individuals on free weekly sessions about candidates who are running, their history, their platforms, and what they stand for, we teach them how to specifically get involved in the legislative process, how to research legislation, how to read it yourself, how to interpret it, how to do the policy research behind it, and we even allow our classes to then go and construct their own bills and have a city mock council meeting. And within my experience of teaching civic education in Prince George's County, the one issue that I really find is that we have to do a better job as constituents of understanding who is running and self-availing ourselves to finding out what these people really stand for. Too often in Prince George's County, there are people who say, I'm not gonna vote for a person until I can specifically get out and find, or they come to me and I talk to them. And although I understand the need for the connection between the community and the elected official, civics is not a privilege, it's a right. You have a right to go out and vote. You have a right to go out and know who is on your ballot. And if you don't, you can be put in a situation where you now have representation that does not fight for you, but instead fights for personal gain and personal availment. So I would say to the community, the biggest thing that I would say is for any election, whether it's a municipality election for a city council member or a mayor, all the way up to President of the United States, vet every single person that comes across your ballot and do your due diligence. It shouldn't always have to be because you know that person you're going to vote for them or because you've heard from that person you're going to vote for them, but it's because you know that you've done the research and you know what their track record is, what their knowledge base is, and how they can actually influence government on a day-to-day basis.
The entire question or just, you want me to repeat the whole thing?
Yeah,
Okay, no problem, no problem. A District 6 resident asks, there is a concern expressed on social media platforms that Prince George's County operates based on who you know. Regular citizens who do not live in high-end neighborhoods or have certain connections feel overlooked and dismissed. Given the history of African Americans in this country, it's sad that we operate this way in our own county. Please address this concern.
Now I see why you said the whole question. That was a long question. So let's be 100% right. In this county, we do, like most counties, vote based on who we know. We do vote based on how many signs we've seen, how many mailers we've received, and it makes sense that folks who are not living in those wealthier areas feel overlooked because they are overlooked. The system that we have for electing people to office is wired for those who are wealthy and have money and access to money, right? And it rewards them by giving them more power and more access to money once they're elected. There are so many people that I have spoken to in campaigning that don't know that there are 7 people running in this race because they don't see signs for 7 people. They don't know that those signs cost money. They don't know that mailers cost thousands of dollars to send, right? Just for you to throw it in the trash. And so they don't know that really what this system represents is that we buy people's votes, right? We spend enough money to get elected based on recognition, and not based on our qualifications. And so what I've done with my campaign is really try to explain, one, what the job is, how this impacts your daily life, so that people can be informed as voters. And I think that if we consider the truth, which is that we have been voting the way that we did in high school, right, based on how many flyers and signs we've seen. If we consider the truth, we can also consider that the people who are not represented by money are feeling left out, and we can do something different. And again, I would say we're starting to see that all around the country. Let's do that in Prince George's County.
So, right before I got here, I heard through the grapevine that the incumbent is throwing a forum down the street, ironically, or rather coincidentally. So, there has been much discussion on social media about these two events at the same time, this one and the one down the street. Do you have any thoughts on this topic? I work in news, so I already have my answer, but I'm not running, so.
We have 2 minutes to give thoughts. I have about an hour's worth of thoughts. I find it, first of all, I'm challenged by saying incumbent. The person that you're referring to was appointed in January. So they're, to me, not the true incumbent. But what I will say is, I find it to be antithetical to serving the community, to force community members to choose between coming to a candidate forum where they can get to know all of the candidates and coming to a town hall to talk about a much needed grocery store, a long awaited grocery store that my understanding is it was brought based on the incumbent that we had. So again, I'll go back to my previous answer so that I don't hold you longer than the 2 minutes. This is about looking the part. This is about her being able to affiliate herself with that accomplishment. And it is an accomplishment to finally have that grocery store. But I have thoughts about the fact that it wasn't announced until election season. I have thoughts about the fact that you would now invite folks away from this forum to that, because we've known about this forum as candidates since early April. So that was before Sprouts was announced.
That's the sugar-coated answer. For the real one, we'll meet out back.
So this is actually Dominique and I's third, forum together. And I've enjoyed each one of them because she's extremely intelligent and their real questions are being answered. That's what forums represent. They represent the opportunity for the community to come in, to see the candidates, to put names to faces, and to say, now tell me why I should vote for you. In any other jurisdiction that we've usually seen where people can be appointed in the last year of a term when the person vacates, typically there's an unspoken rule that that person does not run for re-election because they do not want to seem that they are using the seat that they were appointed to then run for an office that they have not won yet. And unfortunately, I believe that that is what I am seeing. When the constituents, when you tell me you care about the constituents, that means that when the constituents ask you to come, you come. And that you find a way to get there even if they didn't ask you to come. So for us to look at this record going back into March 2nd, where we got the email and we agreed to come here to have these conversations, and for not only a grocery store to be released 2 weeks or a week before that event, but then for a town hall to pop up immediately after, where it's not even the candidate or the appointee by themselves, but then the former elected official standing right there to be able to answer questions and concerns. As a constituent, it gives me pause because I wonder, are you able, as the current council member, to be able to stand up and explain to me what was going on, how we got here, how we will progress, and what our future will be? And from my understanding as a District 6 constituent, our current appointed official has not proven that. And the fact that they scheduled a town hall during this time shows me that it is not the community that they are trying to reach, but instead that they are trying to separate groups, dilute the votes, and at least make this as much of a fight as possible for a person that does not deserve it.
being a news anchor, I have to be nonpartisan and non-biased. So they kind of, yeah, I know I wasn't supposed to do that, but yeah. Okay, all right. So we are going to go to property taxes and utility costs. How do you plan to address the rise in property taxes and utility costs for residents?
Whose turn is it, y'all?
So the good thing about property taxes is separate a little bit from utilities. A majority of the utilities is going to come through the Public Service Commission on the state, which means the General Assembly has more of an input than the state does. And what most people don't know is that actually getting utility cost change is actually very tough. You have to stand in front of a judge. They have to plead, the energy provider has to plead their case. There's going to be back and forth, and then the judge rules of whether it is equitable to actually raise those charges. Data centers, of course, stand outside of that because they're an automatic raising just because they've been put on the grid. But the good part about that is that it's a tough process on its own. The best thing we can do the best thing that I can do as your council member for District 6 is work with my allies in the General Assembly to make sure and to monitor the Public Service Commission, monitor every single price change initiative, and make sure that the ones that are not justified are struck down, and even the ones that are justified are as low as possible. But the second thing when it comes to property taxes, the positive thing about it is that property taxes can't just change. It has to change through the budget allocation process from the county council. So unless the county exec proposes it or unless the county council votes for it in their budget process, there won't be raises in property taxes. My issue is, though, that we've seen the state and the county and say we're not going to raise your property taxes and not do that, but since we're in budget deficits on both the county and the state level, they've raised other fees. So now when you go to the MVA and you go to renew your license or your tags, you have $300 to $400 worth of administrative fees that you don't know were popped up. And so what this means to me is that we are not fiscally responsible with our budget on the county level. When you look at every successful jurisdiction, what makes them successfully when it comes to their fiscal responsibility? It is the fact that their revenue is based off of business tax, period. Property tax should go directly to programs and amenities to you. It should not go to actually having to service the day-to-day needs that your taxes should already cover. So for me, my initiative is going to be to get in and be fiscally responsible with our budget, streamline, cut costs, not send council members to Vegas for no reason, coming back with nothing to offer, but instead take some of that money, streamline those funds, and make sure that your taxes are not only lowered, but your other fees are lowered as well.
Okay, so you let him off the leash with that last question, and now it's getting a little
I was
shady.
going to shake his hand again, but I'll wait until
It's
this
getting
is
a little shady. I'm not saying I disagree. I'm just saying it's getting a little shady. I
ahead.
do agree with what Joel said in terms of utilities. The county council is not empowered to do much about our utility costs other than advocate. And I do think that that's something that we could see more of from the county council that we haven't seen. As it pertains to property taxes, I slightly disagree. Our property taxes are determined at the county council level, but at the state level, your taxes will go up because the state every 3 years is going to review a third of the state to see what the assessment should be for your property. And if your property value has gone up, which of course we're building plenty of houses to make sure your property value goes up, then your taxes will go up. And so right now, our county executive is planning to generate another $92 million from our residential property taxes toward the FY27 budget. So I think that one of the things that we can do when it comes to property taxes, again, does go back to increasing our commercial tax base. If we increase our commercial tax base, we can relieve the tax burden on homeowners because right now we're in the opposite situation from our neighboring counties. In Montgomery County, they rely on 30% of their revenue coming from residents, 70% coming from commercial taxes. We're the opposite. 70% of our revenue comes from residential property taxes, and just about 30% comes from commercial taxes. And we see all these vacant commercial spaces, and we're not doing what we can to fill those spaces, right? I've worked with some of the business owners, and I'm a business owner myself, who want to expand in the county. that would help us to increase our revenue. We can help them increase their revenue, and the current county council hasn't taken the opportunity to do that. So that's something that I would do from the county council.
When elected, your role as a council member is to initiate new legislation. What would be your first bill on the table and why?
My turn, right? Is it my turn? Okay, I think so. Yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot, what my first bill would be. And I think that the first bill would be something that's actually not as innovative as I would like. But growing up, when I was in high school, we didn't have Maryland Live Casino. And we were told when I was in high school that money was going to the schools, and I knew as a 17-year-old that money was not going to increase our education budget. Then the same thing happened with MGM. And so my first piece of legislation would be to dedicate stable sources of revenue to education. And as I've been, campaigning and talking to different people, some people don't have children, and so they don't truly see the tie between the education budget and themselves. But what I can tell you is, because we don't invest in education the way that we should, families leave the county. When their students are not going to get the competitive edge that they deserve from our school systems, they send them into private schools, and they move to other counties to get what they can get just across the line. When families move, we can't bring businesses here. Businesses invest where families are rooted and stable and planning to stay for at least 12 to 18 years. So I would invest in education, and I would make sure that we have stable sources of dedicated revenue just for education, because it has ripple effects for everything else that we want in the county and everything else that we need in order to excel and to thrive in Prince George's County.
So for me, I go off of what the county council is currently doing. That's how I'm going to plan my trajectory of how to start on day one. And the one thing that I do not like is the mismanagement of funds from the council. I just talked about budget, making sure that when it comes to our budget, we're fiscally responsible. One of the areas that we've seen that is in our grants process in Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, who has the ability to also issue grants. Right now, the county council and the county executive did some motions within the General Assembly to try to streamline some processes for development and planning department over from that side. And then at the same time, they've been poking and prodding within Park and Planning's grant budget to the point that the General Assembly told them that they had to stop. And for us to show that we are a government of accountability and of the people, my first initiative would be a bill to make sure that grants cannot be sent out through the county council office specifically, as well as the council administration office. And what this means is that right now the county council members have the say of which nonprofits get those grants funds specifically. They get to choose, sign off, and push through. And now we've seen even some of the stipulations around making sure that money is used properly being rolled back, as we saw the grants director in the county council be fired and then be replaced by somebody who is now on the county council, their family member. We've seen now they've taken around red tape about making sure that the finances are being used the right way and just pushed through. To me, that this means that the county council should not hold that power, but instead it should go to the Office of Procurement, who can make sure that when the county needs nonprofits, when it needs businesses, we are making sure that their financials are in the right order and that we are hiring not off of favoritism based off the individual council member, but what is actually needed for the county. So my first initiative, my first bill would be a bill that takes the grant administration power from the county council and county administration and puts it in the hands of the Office of Procurement. Once that happens, we will then go back and set the parameters of what amenities do we need, what services do we need, and basically make sure that it's an equitable process within the Office of Procurement.
The current social media trend is that Prince George's County residents want change. A resident expressed concern that when there are several new candidates running for a position like we have here, the votes are split between them and the incumbent ends up winning the highest percentage of votes. If that happens, the people don't get the change they want. What is your response to that resident, and what can we do about it?
So I understand that residents' thoughts and feelings because, yes, you know, we as a community do want to strive to be more organized and make sure that we're picking our candidates before the close of the election registration. I agree with that. However, I also agree with open elections to the point that if a person believes that they are in an individual who can offer something to the office, has the understanding of the role and position, they should be able to run and the community should be able to hear them. I think the issue doesn't lay with the individuals who want to run for office because they are sacrificing their personal free time and finances to reach out to the community and run for elected office. I think the issue revolves around the connection between those candidates and then the community. We have to make sure that the community is more informed. I speak with my father, Bishop Joel, often, and we talk about how Prince George's County right now really is missing a news media outlet to let the community know everything that's going on in their local politics. We can't just say that, oh, it's the incumbent, and because they're an incumbent, that's why they're going to win. They're the incumbent because, or the reason that it looks like they're going to win is because they have that name recognition. They have that office budget to utilize. They have all of those things that surround themselves. That's an issue that we find personally with those incumbents. However, that should not deter people from running. If we as a community want to get together and appoint people to run and have a voting system amongst ourselves, I'm perfectly fine with that. But I do want to make sure that everyone in the community feels the chance, like Dominique said earlier, that they can run, and whether they have a lot of money, a little bit of money, they still have a chance to run and serve their community. However, we do need to make sure that we are connecting the community to these candidates and making sure that they know who the candidates are, what they stand for, what their track record is, what their history is, and make sure that they can make informed decisions on these candidates instead of just having to show up at the ballot and pick someone at the last second.
When it comes to this issue, I think that, again, one of the things that we miss is that there are people who profit and benefit from the status quo. There are people who are happy to have us be ignorant about who is on the ballot, what the offices are, what the qualifications are that you need to do that job. That's the reason that we don't have more informed voting. If we did, then we would have more equitable outcomes. I would support, in response to that question, ranked choice voting. I also support the idea that, for example, now we have somebody who is running for county executive as an independent, and they have to petition to be on the ballot, where the rest of us only had to apply and pay a small fee. I would support us having the sort of nonpartisan elections that we see in some other states, so that people could do ranked choice and vote for in a ranking order of who they would want to fill each office. But I also think that there is some work that could be done, whether it's at the county council level, the Board of Elections level, to make sure that people are more educated about the different offices and who's running. I think that we could see them be a little more creative. A news outlet would be great, but these people are in the community. They can come to churches and explain. They can go to restaurants and put posters up. There are more ways to do it than the typical methods that we've seen. And again, the people who are invested in us continuing to have the same outcomes do not want to see that happen.
So we're going to move to a traffic topic now. Traffic has increased significantly on Westphalia and Darcy roads. We have dump trucks and cars speeding through our neighborhoods. What is your plan to calm the traffic and have the speed limit observed?
I'll be honest, I don't know that I have a plan for having the speed limit observed. But in terms of traffic, I'm a systemic thinker. I think about what's the root cause of this problem and how do we address the root cause so that we address the whole problem. And what I see in Westphalia when I visit is that the short-sighted thinking has manifested, right? When we allow development to outpace infrastructure, we see traffic problems like this. So before all of these beautiful homes were built, there should have been a proportional plan to build more roads, to build the overpass, to build the different transportation options that were promised to the Westphalia community. So what I would do to address that is halt some of this construction and halt some of this development so that we have an opportunity to catch up the infrastructure to what's already been developed and to what's planning to be developed. Because I think, again, and this isn't specific to traffic alone, but what we see right now at the county council level, at the county executive level, is a lot of very short-sighted decisions. Let's green light this. Let's do this, and then we have to go back and revisit, well, okay, here's the impact of that decision. Now we have to spend more money to fix that. So let's think a little more long-term, right, when we're in charge of governing the community. And so that's what I would do short-term. And then going forward, I would implement a process. Well, they have a process, but I would enforce that process to make sure that that's proportional and that we're auditing the actions that we're taking. Because we too little do we see politicians check their work. And that's what we need to address issues like the traffic in Westphalia.
I agree on many of that. We do have an issue when it comes to the way that our infrastructure is set versus our development. However, where I do disagree with is necessarily the pause, right? I don't necessarily think we have to pause anything specifically yet because that'll just cause more distraction. One of the main things that I look at is all of the construction that goes around all of these main roads or connector roads and how much that emphasizes the issue of traffic. And pausing that may have a negative effect of keeping certain, materials or certain vehicles on the sides of the roads, cones, certain areas and things like that. I think the biggest thing that we need to do is actually start it from the ground up. Look at everything policy like a weed. You can't snip it off from the top, but you have to take the weed out from its roots. And by doing that, that means we have to redo our master site plan, our master plans for each councilmanic district. I do agree with the notion that we are doing one project development right now in Prince George's County, which is the reason why everything looks repetitive and mucky. What we need to do is go back and sit down, each council member for their district, and rewrite their master plan. Rewrite where they want their industrial complexes and their industrial zones, rewrite where they want their entertainment facilities, rewrite where they want their sporting facilities, education, schools, things like that, and plan the development to make sure that the infrastructure will support it. Make sure that the infrastructure construction projects are done before the development projects themselves. And I do agree that we also need to bring an auditor in, but the biggest thing is that each councilmanic or each council member needs to sit down and restructure their master plan. And once that plan is followed, then we need to work with the planning board to make sure that it is up to the standards that were passed not only by that individual council member, but the entirety of the county council. And that's what I plan to do on day one, is to begin working on the District 6 master plan so that we can actually have a real pathway forward for District 6 and Prince George's County as a whole.
Do you support the idea of an independent inspector general's office in Prince George's County? Why or why not?
Yes, I 100% do. And it's because right now we do not have a county auditor. I don't know if people knew that. There was a whole fiasco where an auditor was appointed, and then that appointment was then relisted back on the county's job page, and since then there has been no news. In a comment section, actually, I just read the other day that one of the council members went under and tried to list the audit manager currently and say that that is the county auditor, but the county auditor is an appointed position to which that there is a code enforceable way that we have to appoint them into that seat, and it has to be transparent in front of the community, done within committee, then passed by the county council after they were after that person was nominated by the county exec. Because we don't have those red tapes, we've seen things now like council members fast track grants into nonprofits that they have familial associations with. or cut office budgets for other council members within the county council. That was a bill that was heard today by Councilmember Ivy, where she's proposing that every councilmanic district, including the at-large, gets the same amount of office budget, and it was a huge fight for some reason. Like, that isn't a major issue. I don't know why people wouldn't want 2 council members. You get a councilmanic council member, or 3, a councilmanic council member, and then 2 at-large. But for some reason, there's this internal strife, and because we don't have an because we not only don't have an auditor, but an independent inspector general to really look into these things and see what is and isn't legal, it seems like everything is just running with no checks and balances. So I believe in order to bring back transparency, honesty, and efficiency in Prince George's County government, we definitely need, especially if we do not have a present appointed and approved county auditor, we definitely are going to need an independent office to make sure that our that our county council, our county executive, and our agencies are all functioning in the way that the state and county code and county charter are enabling us to do.
Okay, so my mother's sitting here. I grew up with an auditor. So the answer is yes. It would be yes, just because that's who I grew up with. She used to work in the office of OIG. To me, you know, some of the things that Joel mentioned that seem this way, they are this way. We do have a county that is unchecked right now. We do have the state coming in and regulating what the county council can do in terms of the budget, because they see that we don't have the oversight, we don't have a watchdog, which is what we need. I personally think that the auditor, that should be another elected position, because allowing the county council to appoint that position also opens the door for that person to be someone that they like or don't like, and for us to be in the situation that we're in now. So I definitely unequivocally support having an inspector general, having a county auditor, and I think one of the things I would advocate for is that that person be elected by the people, since they are truly accountable to the people, and so that there aren't improper connections with the county council that's appointing them, and that they are, you know, charged with overseeing.
All right, one more question from me, and then we're gonna open it up to the floor. This is a 2-part question, so I can repeat it if you guys need me to. Which development firms are financing your campaign? And have you received or do you intend to accept contributions from IPAC or affiliated PACs? Voters deserve to know whose interests are in the room.
I 100% agree. I signed a pledge not to accept any funds from IPAC. And there are no development firms that are funding my campaign. My campaign is funded primarily from people that I know, who trust me, who've asked me questions, even though they know me, about what I plan to do as a council member. But I'm also running a publicly financed campaign. So right now, I'm waiting on funds from the county to match the over 150 county donations that I've received in order to fully fund my campaign.
And just a caveat on this, the county has a law that when it comes to receiving developer money, if you receive money from a developer, then anytime their designated site plan comes up in the district council process, you have to recuse yourself from it. So even if you did, I've met with the developers, but they would even tell you, and we haven't received $1, we haven't asked for $1 from them, but it is because even if I did want a partner to bring some successful development into the community, if I did take their funds, I would no longer be able to do that. So the notion within the Prince George's County Council that, you know, it's different from the General Assembly. In the General Assembly, they can max out as much as they want with no issue at all. You can even be a lobbyist and still be a elected official in the General Assembly. On the County Council, it's the exact opposite. You cannot take those funds and work with those individuals once you make it. So no, I have not received any developer funds. No, I have not received any APAC or any PAC funds, whatever the case may be. We are a completely community grassroots campaign that has been raised funds from predominantly, if not 100%, Prince George's County and DMV Maryland, DC, and Virginia Native citizens as a whole.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all so much. Thank you. That was very helpful. I think we can all say that that was very helpful to us as residents and as voters. So we appreciate your time and your effort coming out and your just your faithfulness in this effort here. And so we do. I'm too close to that. And so we do want to open up this opportunity for people here to ask questions. So if you have a question, please just let me know, and I'll come around with the mic.
Good evening. I am a retired educator and one that still enjoys going back into the schools and working with the students. However, that is not the case for a lot of people. And even though people don't like to hear it, a lot of it is because of our children. And we have teachers that are quitting. People don't like driving the buses because of the behavior. So my question to you all that I don't hear any of the candidates saying is, what do you propose in offering for our youth? We have so many wonderful children, wonderful youth here in the county, but they are being overshadowed by a lot of the bad things that are happening. And there are not a lot of things in this county for our youth to do. So that's my question.
No, that's an amazing question. And just to give you a little bit of insight on me, I'm a huge nerd. Comic books, anime, manga, all of that type of stuff. I love to read. I love to, dive into that stuff. And I've actually been able to form, I actually have another, nonprofit called Kingdom Kids. And within that is a group of individuals who read comic books, who like to draw, or just to help them find their hobbies. And I've learned through that process that one thing that the youth is missing is, one, things to do now, but then two, ways to actually go out and make real money. Six Flags closing is a bigger issue than a lot of people talk about, because Six Flags employed 6,000 Prince George's County students through the Summer Youth Employment Program, that once it ran out for the other schools and things like that, a part of the program where they could work, they would just funnel that into Six Flags, and now that's gone. So the issue is going to get worse until we do two things. The first thing is that we have to invest in our youth and give them things not only to work at, but then also to do that are constructive. But then the second thing is we have to teach them how to make money. A lot of these kids look on TikTok, they look on YouTube, and they're trying to monetize and make money, and they believe the best way that they can do that is either through dancing or lewd acts. And because they see that going viral, they try to imitate that. We have to undo that thought process and show them that if you do want to make money through TikTok, how about we find you a subject matter that you can be an expert in, and you can build your content around that. How about we build you facilities for you to go and practice your skills and get better at your skills, and then we can upload that content so we can. How about we put trades back into schools so that we can make sure that you have a way to matriculate outside of high school and actually go forth and get a job. So there are a number of things that we can do to reinvest back in the youth, and there are things that won't even break our bank. They're just things that we can follow. Like, for example, it takes nothing for us to go wrangle up all the youth and young adults, because that was the biggest thing from around my community. It wasn't just my parents telling me to take out the trash. It was, make sure you took Miss Johnson's trash out down the street. Make sure you go talk to Mr. Ryan and make sure he doesn't need his yard raked. It was a community around us to make sure that we knew everybody in our community, we respected them, we had things to do, but then also after we did the money, we got a hot meal and a few dollars worth of cash that we can go and buy a nice shirt with or something. So we have to make sure we give our youth and young adults something to do, a place to work, and then a pathway to make money as they're matriculating out of middle school and high school.
Thank you for that question. I agree with much of what Joel said. One of the things that I've talked about in my platform is having third spaces for young people. So they go home, they go to school, they need another place to go. And the same is true for adults. And I think one of the issues, and why I agree with Joel, one of the issues is, again, that we have cut our education funding. When I was at Suitland High School, we had technical education. We had a whole wing devoted to all of these different trades, and many of the people that I graduated with are still working in those trades today because they were able to get that education then. But I think what's even more critical is we know that when we don't challenge students at school, they tend to behave more recklessly. So if we keep pulling programs out where they're not feeling challenged, we should expect that behavior to continue, right? For me, again, I was a nerd. I was studying philosophy in high school and then went on to get 2 degrees in philosophy because that was my interest, but it was nurtured in high school. And if I didn't have programs that nurtured my brain and my understanding, while my classmates were able to do visual and performing arts or to study Academy of Finance or study cosmetology or whatever it was that could keep them focused and keep them engaged in school, then I, like them, we all would have been suffering. And now when I go back to Suitland High School, I see that they have cut the majority of those programs. And so not to continue to belabor the point, but I think that it's critical that we address the fact that we have cut so much funding for young people and expect them to behave as model citizens. We're not nurturing them as priorities because we're not putting our dollars behind what they need. So I think that that's critical. I think that we should be partnering with businesses in the community because businesses want to support young people. We even have a youth council that was started by one of the county council members. We can ask young people what they want to see from us, what would they like to do, and we can supply that. And I have a youth campaign within my campaign, and it's called Future of PG County, and it is young people who are in high school that want to be engaged in civics and art, but they have complaints too. They notice that we don't have the money for them to play sports. They notice that we don't have equipment for them anymore. They notice when programs are being cut the same way I did when I was in high school. So I think for me, it still goes back to we have to be better stewards of our money. And when we show them that they are our priority with our dollars, we will see behavior change.
And can I just use my second rebut on that one too, because there was one very important part that I left off. Sorry, y'all, we got 2 rebuttals, and so I'm gonna use my second one here. Another, just to caveat that, my wife, Mariah, she's feeding our youngest, so she can't really raise her hand right now, but she's the beautiful young lady with the curly hair. That's my oldest right there. They're all over there. But she's a teacher. She started off in Prince George's County Public School System in Lewisdale. And within that, one of the things that she would always come about, as tough as a job it was, when you talk about her coming home crying every day because ICE was raiding homes and kids were afraid to come to school, when you talk about how there were multiple generational family homes that you had great-grandmothers, grandmothers, parents, kids, grandkids all living in the same house, the struggle it is that sometimes these kids would come to school and not have food. Just the many of the struggles that she used to talk about from Lewisdale, the one thing that she always said that caveated that difference, and I just leave it to you all as a call to action, the one thing that she always spoke about is the kids have to feel heard. The more that you make these kids feel heard, the more you take the time to sit and talk with them. And even if they're acting, the crazier they're acting, that's more of an incentive for you to grab them and sit them down and say, what's really going on? How really can we reach the serious issue here? Are you hungry? We need to go shopping? Do you need some new socks? Do you need some new shoes? Whatever the case may be. These are the things that the kids of our community need. You would be shocked of how many kids come to school in the same uniform 3, 4, 5 days in a row without it being washed because they don't have access to a washer and dryer at home. And then when we see those same kids who the community is forgetting about and then go and acting up, we want to ostracize them instead of getting involved and saying, hey, wait a minute, what is it that you need? What is it that you're lacking? What is the little rock in your shoe that has you acting as angry as you are, and how can we get it out to make sure that you're comfortable and back into yourself? And I'll give you all that call of action. When you run into a kid like that, if you are in a safe space and you feel safe to do so, grab that kid, give them a hug, give them some mentorship. Maybe they'll need a hot meal, maybe they'll need to wash some clothes, maybe they'll need something, but just don't abandon the children, because remember that they're going to be the generation that comes up and takes us to the next heights.
So I just want to add to that. I agree. Well, don't just grab the kid. Now it's 2026, y'all. Don't grab kids, but support children, but support their families. Because a lot of times we're looking at that child and we're asking them what they need, but we're not asking their parents. We've already passed judgment on their parents that are not able to support them in the ways that we think that they should be supported. So support the children, but also let's look at the parents. What do they need, right? Because it's not the child's job to have a washer and dryer. It's their parents' job to supply that. And if they don't have what they need, they can't give it to their children. I know that some of our schools do have, washer and dryer and community resources and that kind of thing. But how often are we going beyond just what we see with the child and saying, what do their parents need? Right? And the same way that children can experience shame when they don't have everything, when they don't have clean clothes to come to school, their parents feel that shame too. Their grandparents feel that too, because we live in a very expensive area. And so if we're not willing to have true community where we're accountable for each other, right, where we take care of each other, when we're judging their parents, we are judging them. Right? When we see their behavior, we're like, what are their parents doing? But what are we doing as a community to support that whole family? Right? So I just wanted to add that piece as well, because it's not just these young children, it's our community that's lacking.
Good evening. I've asked this question with the county exec candidates last week, and I wasn't satisfied with the response that I did get. There's a tsunami coming. There's foreclosures coming. We're inundated with so many townhomes in the area. So many people have lost their federal jobs. It takes 2, maybe 3 federal jobs just to maintain that mortgage. You miss a $4,000 or $5,000 mortgage, how are you going to ever recover? So the foreclosure signs are going up. So I want to know if you're braced and if you're ready to see how we're going to help these people and that we're not inundated with a bunch of abandoned homes. I mean, like you talked about, it's an expensive area. Yes, it's very expensive. And with $5 a gallon gas, $15 filet steak, $7 hamburger, I don't know how we're going to afford it. So I just want you to know what's your plan to keep the community alive, at least till we pass this one federal session until we get to the time to vote in 2028.
So this is actually one of the things that I talk about in my platform in terms of housing stability, right? Because I mentioned before, affordable housing is a cliche, but we can help people to stay in their homes. So one of the things I would propose is a moratorium on foreclosures while we're in this crisis that we're in until 2028. I am someone who was riffed from the federal government the first Trump presidency. During that administration, everything was anti-Obama, and I happened to work for an agency that Obama started. So I can sympathize with folks who were just laid off last year, and we've seen our unemployment rate almost double in a year, which is insane. And again, County Council has money in the budget where they can help people stay in their homes by helping them access the equity that they have. They can do a moratorium on foreclosures because we saw that with COVID. We could also help them to possibly buy down their interest rates. There are a lot of different options for us to be able to keep people in their homes, especially because our county executive is depending on those property taxes to close this budget deficit. So I think it's really important that we use all of our options because we are in this crisis right now. And those are some of the solutions that I've come up with.
and amazing solutions as well. And to be honest with you, that's just the fact of the matter. Government subsidies is the way that we make sure we protect our constituents. The problem is that we've seen over the last 3, 5, 10, 15 years, every single year when we have council leadership change, priorities of the budget change. What most people don't realize is it takes almost a year, sometimes longer, for an agency to figure out how to enact a law the county council puts on the books. But because of our leadership constantly changing and priorities changing, we're redistributing funds before we even give the agencies an opportunity to learn how to enforce these things. Fiscal responsibility is what's going to be the salvation of this county. Because we can say, yes, we can go into the budget right now and put a whole bunch of money into that. But what if that money then degrades further the snow response program that we already are having issues with? What if allocating those funds then has other priorities or agencies like transit starting to take hits or things like that? The biggest thing that we have to learn with government is that there's always going to be effects, whether they're positive effects, adverse effects, whatever the case may be, there are effects. And we have people in the Wayne Curry building whose jobs it is to tell us whether these effects are going to be positive or going to be negative and lay out what to do in other strategies. We need council members in there to actually work with those individuals and not shut them down just so that they can say they got a bill passed. I, as your District 6 council member, will pledge to do everything that I can to put government subsidies into things that, because there are a number of tsunamis coming, including that one on foreclosures. But I do not want to promise you that, but then in doing so, I take away something that is instrumental to you or something that we're already struggling to do. What we have to do is, first of all, is get our budget together, close the deficit for good so that we're not trying to balance that budget back year after year after year. And once we're able to do that, because we can put some of these measures into place as soon as we touch down office on day one. However, we have to make sure that if it does it, like I said, it's not something that hurts you in the long run, but something that benefits the county and benefits us all.
Just want to also offer, though, that when we're thinking of something like this, this is a time where we tighten our belts, right? So if it's good enough for us to cut $150 million from the education budget, then we can prioritize keeping people in their homes. When you look at the FY27 proposed budget, there are increases, and they're more than just cost of living 1% to 2% increases. In fact, the county executive office is getting over a $3 million increase. So we have the money to be able to shore up our county for this short-term crisis. I think that if we all are more informed as voters, we can put people in place who can walk and chew gum at the same time, right? They can address our short-term crisis, and they can look at what are our long-term priorities. How can we make sure that certain things don't happen in the long term? But I can tell you, I would rather deal with the snow in my house than have my house floor closed, but the snow got taken up in a few days. I think that what we have right now is a true crisis. I love the way that you use the word tsunami. And I think that we need leadership who understands if you're gonna cut from this really important budget line item, you gotta make it make sense for all of us. And when you're gonna increase this other budget line item, you got to explain why you're cutting these others. You got to explain why some people are going to be losing their homes while the office of the county executive is getting a boost, right? So I think that we have an opportunity to do both.
I was not supposed to be here tonight. I was supposed to be at the other meeting, but I'm glad I came by here. My name is Nat Lewis. I'm a former professional golfer, and when I was out on tour, I found out that a lot of things that was being worked on and things that were being done out there, they did not come back into the black community. So when I retired, I said, well, I'm going back to my community, and I'm going to share this information with everybody I know, and I'm not going to charge them a dime. So I started doing that at the Enterprise Golf Course. Well, I was asked to come to Davisonville to teach the kids in Davisonville. So I went down there. I told them the first day, I said, look, you can ask me anything about golf, and I'll tell you. The second session, one of the parents asked me, who do we pay? But when I go to the Enterprise golf course and teach little black boys and girls, I'm being threatened with being arrested. I have that in writing from park and planning officials. Do you know park and planning? When I was up there at Enterprise Golf Course, I was just up there with my grandson, showing and giving him tips and everything, and this guy came along with his 2 sons, and they joined us. Well, one of his sons, park and planning, did a write-up on him. This kid, his mother called me and said, park and planning did a write-up on little Jordan. I said, send me a copy of it, and this is it right here. I looked at it. This kid had won 7 golf tournaments, and he had just started playing golf. 7 golf tournaments in about a year's time with golf clubs that his father got out of the trash cans, going from golf course to golf course, getting old golf clubs, and none of the clubs matched. As a matter of fact, the father called me one day and said, can you check his 6-iron out, because little Jordan is having a problem with his 6-iron. Well, come to find out, his 6-iron was for somebody like Shaquille O'Neal. And this was a little boy. And so I told him, I said, look, you all are going to have to get him. When I saw this, I said, you all are going to have to get him his own clubs. So I would not allow them to go because they didn't know what they were doing. I went with them to get clubs in this boy's hands that could fit him. Well, he was shooting 94, 95. In 4 months' time, his scores dropped from 94, 95 to 84, 85. And then I asked him, I said, how many boys in the county can beat you? He said, about 6. I said, when you go home this evening, write their names down because we're going to knock them off one by one. Well, he called me back. He says, Coach, I shot a 79. Now, this is all in 1 year, within 8 months. And then I said, okay. I said, how many kids in the county can beat you? He said, 6. I said, write their names down because we're going to knock them off one by one. Then he called me back one day and said, Coach, what did you shoot today? I said, I shot a 78. He said, I'm 2 strokes better. I shot a 76. I said, but wait a minute. 78 is my D game. Well, do you know this boy went out and shot a 69 within 8 months of him getting those new clubs in his hands? Jordan Wallace, right now, he is the #1 golfer, high school golfer in Prince George's County, 2 years in a row. The #2 guy in Prince George's County, I also train him. He just got a full 4-year scholarship, golf and academic scholarship, to go to Washington College with an extra $1,000 for books. And I didn't start out, we were just playing around. We were just playing around. I'm just giving them free golf tips. And these 2 boys took advantage of it. But yet, if I'm caught giving them free golf tips at the Enterprise Golf Course, I could be arrested. Now, what they have done, they have started posting these no unauthorized teaching signs throughout the county, starting at the golf courses, Enterprise Golf Course, Paint Branch Golf Course, and Henson Creek Golf Courses. Well, we tried to get them to remove those signs because, number one, it's not good for our kids to see those signs at our golf courses, and then when they go into the community, in other communities, they don't see those signs where the white kids practice. I have played professional golf. up and down the East Coast. I have never, ever seen signs like these on a golf course in the white community. Never. But yet, they're popping up in Prince George's County, and we were told by Director Tyler in a meeting, I think it was before he was left office, that they're going to post these signs on the basketball courts, football fields, baseball fields, soccer fields, tennis courts throughout Prince George's County. And if you want to know what it looked like, go to Enterprise Golf Course up to the driving range, and you'll see them right there at the driving range. So, if elected, how can we rein parking planning in? Because something has got to be done. Parking planning needs to be reformed. Now, I'm not talking about the low-level staffers, employees. I'm not talking about the volunteers. I'm talking about management, starting from the commissioners on down. We need reform in parking planning.
Yeah, if I could just add on to that, what this gentleman is talking about is also in the pools. And our black children need to know how to swim. It's a safety issue, not just a sport. But I have been to the pools, and we are not allowed to give tips on swimming, no private lessons. So if you just want to take somebody, okay, this is what you do, and they see you doing that, they will take you out of the pool. So you can only have lessons through the county, which I suspect is why they're doing this, because then you have to pay for those lessons. But if it's a free lesson that somebody just wants to give you because they want you to know how to swim, that's a problem.
Can I respond to that? Look, when I go to the white community, I see white men and little white boys out there practicing together. No harm done. They're just out there practicing together. There is no danger in these boys hitting a golf ball on the golf course. There's no danger in that. White people do it all the time. Why can't I do it with these kids in Prince George's County?
I think we're hitting the conversation right on the head, right? That the only plausible reason that this could be the case is because it's a fiscal opportunity for the county. Like I said, on the state level and on the county level, we've seen fees be instituted that we've never seen before, and then they're being shot up in the amount. That's just where we are right now as a county, because you can see individuals scrambling for money. That is my issue with, I agree with you that there needs to be an overhaul on that, but I'm a proponent that there needs to be an overhaul on the complete and total aspect of Prince George's County governance when it comes to our charter, our council, as well, our council rules, as well as our county code. All of it is in shambles, and we see it this day to day, because the first thing that we can easily do is just to say, pass a law that says that this is permissible. But then we're going to have to get fights from parking planning, because they're going to say, well, this is how much we're going to lose if we do that, so are you really sure it's okay? But then at that point, now we're talking about privatization over actually educating and instilling into our youth and young adults, and at that part, to me, the plot is lost. So I agree with you 100% that there's no real cause for it, and I stand with you in that fight to say, no, our kids should deserve to be able to go to our facilities and receive free instructions on how to do it, and not have a monopoly on the teachings of our youth and young adults when it comes to these aspects. And I will say that, again, it all boils back down to fiscal responsibility. We have to stop putting the burden of our main tax revenue source on our community's constituents. We have to make sure, again, that it goes back to the business property tax credit. The business property taxes and other methods to where you guys' money is directly going to the community the way that you want to see it. I empathize with you. I apologize that's the case. There are a number of initiatives that we need to change within park and planning. I agree with you on it, and as your elected official in District 6, I'm looking forward to working with you and others to make sure that those things become a reality.
Thank you for your question, Mr. Lewis. I remember talking to you about this with the golfing, and I think, again, I agree that this is about capitalism, and what we tend to do in the county is continue to exploit the same communities for money instead of having true community. We're not looking at how to support each other and how to, when I was growing up, we had a community pool. And our neighbors would round up all the kids in the community and take us to the pool. And I know our parents were grateful because when we got home, we were all exhausted. We don't have, again, those third spaces that are open to everyone to use. And I agree that it is because we're looking for these little cash grabs and we're not looking at what happens long term when young kids don't learn how to swim, right? What happens when we ignore what the community is asking for because we're thinking about how much money we can get if we charge them for it as opposed to just offering it to them because the space is there. We already pay a tax for parking planning. They're already getting paid. We don't need to pay on top of that. But that's what it looks like when we are running our county with capitalistic values instead of community values. And so that's one of the things that I would bring not only to park and planning and the oversight there, but also throughout the county. There are plenty of instances where we are overcharging or charging for something that we shouldn't be charging for at all because we're so driven by capitalism and bringing in more money and less driven by, okay, what does our community need? Because we've already paid for it. Because to your point, in these other counties where there are predominantly white people, they're not charging for those things because they're invested in nurturing their young people and helping them to grow and become productive citizens. We're invested in surveilling our young people and criminalizing poverty and criminalizing any time that you don't have the same access as someone who has a lot of money. So that's what I plan to bring. That lens is what I plan to bring to the council.
You know, I had a conversation with parking planning officials several times, and at the Enterprise Golf Course, they have these very large practice putting greens. I'm talking about putting greens as large as this room. And I've asked them if we could have an 18-hole putting tournament where they could raise money off of the golf course itself and the putting greens, which has never been done before. And they've turned deaf ear to that idea. But yet they're doing it. Nobody on the East Coast is doing it. They're doing it out in the Midwest, but they're doing it on a professional level. And I think last year, the winner got $15,000. These are just putting tournaments. And I ran the idea past some seniors in the county who can no longer walk 18 holes or something like that. And I ran the idea by them, and they got excited. Yeah, we need to have putting tournaments, you know, because they love that competition. Okay?
And to add, not that I don't think you guys can do anything about this, but to add to this gentleman's point, me being a licensed historical guide in the DMV area, it's been times that I've given private tours to young black kids at Lincoln Memorial Cemetery, where there is a lot of black heritage there. Dr. Carter G. Woodson, the founder of Black History Month, is buried there. Lucy Diggs, one of the founders of Alpha Kappa Alpha, is buried there. Charles Hamilton Houston, who wrote the legislation to end Jim Crow, is buried there. And I've been stopped by the police. But it's been times when I've been walking around with a different demographic of people, and the police just drive right by, you know. And with it being a cemetery, I don't understand from a law enforcement perspective, how do you drive past a cemetery and walk up to a group of people that you don't know if they're giving a tour or you don't know if they're visiting a loved one? That's a problem. But me going to Arlington Cemetery, it's open season, you know. So I do understand that there's certain things that can't be said in here, but I know I'm supposed to be the moderator, but I had to add that.
That's inherent to capitalism. So let's just call a spade a spade. That's what it is. Let's say it here, because we've had some shady comments tonight. We've been keeping it real with each other, so let's call a spade a spade.
How's everybody doing? All right. My name is Keith Washington. I want to thank our two candidates up here for District 6. We have some really talented people that are running for office that we can support. I'm running for county council at large. The at large, which covers the entire county, which is not this race. But I want to say something about what this gentleman said. Listen, if you don't understand racism, everything you think you know about life will confuse you. I don't mean some things, I mean everything, right? It is in economics, education, entertainment, religion, sex, war, politics, you name it. And at any given point in time in your life, you're doing one of those 9 things. And so we have been confused and misled, mistreated, given propaganda to believe in, right, all your life. And we're comfortable in that, right? We're comfortable playing the victim role sometimes. Ladies and gentlemen, the most important 2 qualities you can have in life is courage and unity. Without courage, Maya Angelou said, you could do nothing sufficient. And without unity, you never will be successful. So I encourage everyone, if you have a disagreement with your neighbor, your friend, your husband, wife, go behind closed doors and work it out. Don't work it out in public. And be unified. See, the Jews are unified. I'm going to say it. White people are unified. There's no such thing as right and wrong with them. It's based on their unity. Koreans are unified. The Arabs in our community now and everyone else, they're all unified in their philosophy and how they think and what they do and what they get accomplished. We have to get past this division we have with each other for whatever reason. He's light-skinned, he's dark, she's tall, she's short, blah, 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 on and on and on. Does not matter. And I will tell you the 3 things you need to teach your children and grandchildren, above all else. Ain't but 3 things that matter in life, right? All successful nations, all successful people, all successful empires and countries have done these 3 things, right? You need to teach them the science of mating. You need to teach them the science of economics and finance. And you need to teach them the science of war. We're in the house of the Lord, but I'm going to tell you that. Because you can have $10 trillion in the ground in Nigeria in gold and oil and diamonds. But if you don't have a sufficient army to protect it, it will be taken. That's the science of war. Venezuela has shown you that. Iraq has shown you that. Afghanistan has shown you that. Panama has shown you that. Vietnam showed you that. I spent 20 years in the Army, ladies and gentlemen. I came to this region when I was 15. I'm from a little small town in Texas. I don't mean to take them, be about 3 minutes here. From a little small town in Texas. When I was 15, my mother died. And my aunt put me on a bus to come up here to stay with my grandmother on Mississippi Avenue. And I was here for 2 weeks, and she died. And I stayed in a shelter downtown D.C. on V Street, right? Old man named Henry Hightower taught me how to shine shoes. And we shined shoes for about 6 months. And at 7 o'clock at night, you had to be in the shelter at V Street. You had to be inside that shelter, right? Marion Barry walked through Union Station while we were shining shoes, and he knew Mr. Hightower. And he says, that boy want to work? Mr. Hightower said, yeah. And Marion Barry gave me my first job. When I was 15 years old, I worked down at Parks and Plant, D.C., right? When I was 17, he saved my life. I don't care what nobody say. You can't say nothing bad about Marion Barry around me. He saved my life. At 17, I joined the Army. Never heard of the Army day in my life. Working at Parks and Plant, and a recruiter came through there, and about 5 of us, we joined the Army, just like that. Never heard of the Army day in my life. Spent 20 years in the Army. Now, I was a high school dropout, not because I was a bad kid, because I didn't have anybody. And I got my GED while I was in the Army. I was an E5 buck sergeant, got my GED while I was in the Army, and got my degree while I was in the Army, and got commissioned as an officer in the Army as an E5 and retired as a colonel. Now, I'm going to tell you something. We are a great people. We all have a story. We all have our ups and our downs and our challenges. But ladies and gentlemen, we got to be unified. And we got to choose people that's going to fight for us, right? We are forgiving people. And when we got people been in office 10, 15, 20, 25 years, and they come to us and say, vote for me again, well, if you ain't done it for me in 25 years, you probably ain't gonna do it. That's just a fact. And so we have to use that kind of logic and that kind of reason, those kind of facts, that kind of science, that kind of data, right? And be wed to that, right? Now, I'm gonna tell you something, and I'm gonna just forgive me. This guy has fired 30,000 black women in this county. I own a real estate company. It's family owned. Me and my wife, we've owned it for 30 years, right? And fell into it by accident. Over my time in the Army, I've done a lot of things, and she's done a lot of things. She's worked in the government. And it just blew up overnight, over the last 10 years. It's good for me that these houses are going into foreclosure because we build houses in 5 states. And a lot of other things. I teach at Flowers for free kids how to make money in real estate. Economics will be one of the things that saves our next generation. And I was telling this brother right here earlier that we're the last generation of 50 and 60-year-old black people in this county going to live in these $500,000 houses because our foundation was the federal government, those jobs, right? 6-figure jobs. Trump and them boys from Missouri and Alabama and Kentucky, they come up here and they see all these black people with these 6-figure jobs. Oh, we got to stop that. And that's what they've done. That's what they've done. Pull the rug out from under us financially. So now when you pass or you pass a house on your kids, or they going to have trouble buying these houses because there ain't going to be no federal government job for them to go to as GS-14s, 15s, 13s, 12, whatever. And so we have to understand, ladies and gentlemen, to have a strategic plan for us. For us. And you can, if you ain't looking out, ain't nobody looking out for you. Let me tell you that first of all. For 400 years, nobody been looking out for you. We made it through grit, through sacrifice, through hard times, through struggle. Here comes another wave of Jim Crow. The Congressional Black Caucus is now going to go from 50 members to about 8 or 9 overnight in the next year or so with what they've done at the Supreme Court. And so I'm going to stop now. I can go on and on. But I appreciate you. And we got 2 fighters up here, ladies and gentlemen. So let's get it.
You have a question?
What are your thoughts about the stadium, Landover Mall area, and where Six Flags was before?
So I'll start with Six Flags. I think that our government, our local government, missed a huge opportunity with Six Flags. It didn't bring in as much revenue as you would expect for over 500 acres of land, and that's zoned that way. But if we had government with a vision to treat Six Flags like a Disney World, it could have brought in that revenue. If we had put a hotel there and some restaurants there, if we had really been, again, not short-sighted, but thinking long-term about how to benefit the community and to make Prince George's County a destination, we would have done some of those things to try to edify that space. I feel the same way when it comes to Landover Mall and the stadium. We continue to intentionally blight certain areas, right? Everyone's focused on what the plan is for Six Flags, but Landover Mall has been gone for over 20 years. And if we weren't in a predominantly black community, I come from a real estate background, eminent domain would have been used a long time ago to snatch that land and to make sure that something productive was developed there for the community. But again, it's Landover, so we're okay if it sits and becomes blighted, and if people have, just this open space that we're not benefiting from as a county. We won't let that happen for Six Flags, right? So I think that that's the same when it comes to the stadium. So many people bought houses there and have enjoyed having access to the stadium, and their property values benefit from being close to the stadium. I do think we could have fought harder to keep the stadium here. I think the optics, it looks crazy that we got the stadium and now we're losing it, and it's going back to DC. But my hope is that as a council member, I have an opportunity to impart some wisdom in terms of real estate and how you develop for the long term. So I would like to see more luxury entertainment come to Prince George's County, because I know that a lot of us leave the county when we want fine dining, or if you want, to go to an entertainment venue, right? Because we don't have those things here. And so those are some of the ideas that I have in terms of bringing more to the county so that we are that destination that we should be, and so that we have other people coming here the way that they used to with Six Flags and spending their money here and helping us to grow our economy.
Yeah, so a lot of great points there. I agree with many of them. One area of just full transparency. Yes, the government could have probably stepped in and tried to put some measures within Six Flags and the Commander Stadium realistically to make sure not only the development in the surrounding area was seen the way that it was supposed to be seen through, but also to provide some guardrails. But we do have to call on, it is for what it is, and that's bad ownership. Same ownership of the Commanders was the same ownership of the Six Flags, and they literally ran it to the ground. Yes, Prince George's County Council could have probably stepped in, the General Assembly could have probably stepped in and performed or left some type of parameters there, but all in all, that's really a bad leadership and a bad ownership issue that we're seeing right there. And we also want to be very careful with just slapping things across businesses, because like how we see with the $5,000 use and occupancy fee bill, that although it may seem on paper to look like it has positive effects, it may have negative effects like running away businesses or upcharging prices for patrons or things like that. So I just want to give it that regard to keeping them. And also with the Commander Stadium, the Commanders actually, I was on the development team that was discussing this designated site plan that was looking at the stadium over the last 2 years. And I can attest to a lot of the Commanders development team did want to stay. However, the head owner and partner, I believe Josh Harris, he really wanted them back in DC. And no matter what we pitched to them, no matter what we said to them, no matter what partnerships we did, he was set on that happening, and he was going to make sure it was fulfilled that way. So, but what we can do now, and my plan is, I released a video about it. I always use other jurisdictions as a litmus test, like I said earlier, to see what does and doesn't work. And what I've realized what does work, because even once we get into like the luxury feel and things like that, what we have to build has to bring in all groups and keep all groups in. All demographics. And what I saw that works is the family entertainment complex centers. This takes the town center complex that we kind of use now, like we have in Bowie, like we have in Laurel, but instead of just using it on quick in and out food shops or quick in and out stores, it actually instills family-based entertainment. So like a huge go-karting race, but instead of it just being a go-karting rink, it's a fully immersive experience that has the ninja battle ropes and course over there. It has the arcade in the back. It has the virtual reality arcade where you can put the headset on, put the book bag on, and go forward and play. And then in the back, behind a big glass wall, is a 3-layered go-karting facility that you can basically have all of those immersions in the same thing. Another thing that they have, and I looked at Orlando in their IPAC, I believe it's called their entertainment complex, where they have something like this. Another thing is like WonderWorks. We don't know how many people know what WonderWorks is? WonderWorks, it literally looks like a building where God stuck his hand down, plucked the building out of the ground, flipped it over, and then put it back. Literally, the top of the building looks like it's supposed to be on the bottom with grass around it. It is literally a child's arcade or a children's museum meets an arcade. It is a fun, immersion-packed event where there are different tiered systems of pay. You can pay $20 and go in and enjoy yourself. You can pay $60. You can pay $80. Then there are other amenities around it, like a mirror maze that only costs $5, $10, and you go in and you you run around, you find your way out, and boom. But it keeps people in. Then also when you look at the restaurants that accompany these facilities, it's not just fine dining. They're family entertainment restaurants like Dining with Elmo, where Sesame Street opens up a restaurant that looks just like Sesame Street, and Elmo comes in every now and then and eats with your kids. And then there are other things where there's mid-level dining where you can spend about $60 a plate. Then there's high-level dining where you can spend $130, $140 a plate. The goal is that we want to bring all demographics into one place to be able to enjoy themselves, and no matter whether you're on a $20 budget, $200 budget, or $2,000 budget, we can all have fun and congregate in the same place. So my idea is to take that town center complex, mix it with the entertainment facility complex, and bring in state-of-the-art games, state-of-the-art entertainment, state-of-the-art shows, magic shows, concerts, and things like that into one central place. And I already have the goals targeted of where I want the first 3. And I'm planning to do 8 years, my 8 years in my 2 terms, to do an 8-year investment over 30 years to get 3 complexes built, one in Westphalia, one where Six Flags is, and then a third one, I guess we'll let another district have it, but I'm gonna make sure District 6 is taken care of first and foremost.
My name is Terry Williams, and I'm a new resident to District 6. But I do recall that in the General Assembly, at the end of Hogan's administration, $400,000 or somewhere up in that tune of money, a lot of money was allocated to redo the whole Blue Line corridor. That was the end of the Hogan administration. So we're almost to the end of the first Moore administration, but I don't see where that money that was allocated to us has done anything or produced anything. And so as a county council county council member, what would you do to ensure that the monies that were allocated from the General Assembly actually get to the districts that they were allocated to for our betterment?
So this is a great question, and actually I am one of the stakeholders on the Blue Line Corridor Task Force. Part of their monthly, I believe the meetings are monthly, but their monthly meetings, who gets the updates and things like that. What they're currently working on right now is the site plan for it. They're trying to redo the site plan, but it gets flipped and turned it feels like every 5 months or so. And even when there is some synergy in that process, we need the county council's involvement in it. The problem is that we've had 2 council members come in, and the first council member literally stated it himself. He said, I do not, and I'm quoting this when I say this, he said, I don't know about land use, I don't know about zoning, I don't know about permits, and I don't want to know about land use. I don't want to know about zoning, I don't want to know about permits. This was the council chair who said that. And he said, one of my other colleagues, okay, let me make sure I'm running an honorable race like co-pastor always says. One of the colleagues on that seat, who I personally would not have chosen to lead development in Prince George's County, he said, I'm gonna leave it to him because he knows, because I don't know. Then we follow up with the new chair, who basically shows that exact same feel where I don't really know anything about it, so I'm gonna just throw a bill at a wall and hope that it sticks. At this point in time, we need our general public, we need our community constituents to get involved in these master site plans, to come to when we have these Blue Line Corridor revision meetings, to give your thoughts and your weight behind it. But we also need council members who are transparent and know when those meetings are and actually show up, and then tell the community to show up as well. I can go online right now and find council members with 12, 13, 14, 15 videos of everything that they did this week, and at the end of the videos, I always find myself looking like, so what have you done for me lately? Because none of that stuff just helped me at all. And I don't think it helps a majority of the constituents who are actually looking at this. It looks like one policy issue writing where I have this one issue that I want to fix, so I'm going to slap 5 bills at this one issue and hope at least one of them can do some good. And instead of actually looking at the problem and fixing it, it seems like the council leadership currently right now is dancing around the problem. So what I can tell you personally is I don't need to wait until I'm in the District 6 seat. I am already a part of that stakeholder review committee. I will make sure I forward you whenever there's a meeting, and if it's a public meeting to where you can join, I will make sure you all have that information so you can be in that meeting. I will walk you through the process of where we are right now in the Blue Line Corridor Restoration Program or process, and I can make sure that as your District 6 Council representative, that as a person who was born, raised, and grew up in the Blue Line Corridor, that I'm going to make sure that this corridor, by the time my 8 years are over, is the type of corridor that I can leave in the hands of my children and say, I'm so glad that you're getting a county that was even better to you than it was to me.
Thank you for that question. So, did I do it? Okay. So our state delegates and our state senators are responsible for securing funding for the county. The issue isn't necessarily that we're not getting the funding. The issue is that we're misappropriating the funding when we get it. And so I think that should I use a different mic? Okay. Okay, hopefully we good now. Can y'all hear me? Okay. So the issue is that we're, nope. Sure, well, I'll sit back. The issue is that we're misappropriating the funding. So we receive the funding. We're not, we have been talking about not having a county auditor who is overseeing what we're doing with funding that comes into the county, where our current county council is not being watched. I don't have any professional experience working with the current county council, so I don't have any quotes for you, but I can tell you that had I had the opportunity to speak truth to power, I would have. If I was working with some of the current county council members and saw them making mistakes because they don't have the expertise, I'm as frank as we're being right now, I would be that frank with you then, from whatever position, to be honest about the fact that we're voting for people and electing people who don't have the expertise and the knowledge to serve in the positions that they're elected to. They're not interested in being transparent in that way. I've heard some other county council candidates suggest that we should have a community-facing transparency portal so that you can see money that comes in and where it goes out. And I agree with that. I would support having such a portal. I don't think that you should have to attend all the meetings that you've elected a representative to attend on your behalf. I think that you should be able to trust that the person that you've elected, one, is going to be a good steward over your money, your tax dollars, because while it's being allocated at the state level, this is our money, right? But that's again on us. We have to make sure that we are checking to see if the people who are being elected are truly qualified to and have earned our trust over our money. And so I think that that's the core issue, not just for the Blue Line corridor, but for all of the issues, because we see this deficit, it's closed this year, but it'll be back next year. Because again, we have leadership that is misaligned when it comes to how they're using our funding.
I just can't say thank you enough for you all attending tonight and for all of you all coming. It's been 2 hours we've been at this, and it's, this has been wonderful to get all of this information, so we really do appreciate it. So Reverend West is going to come and pray us out, but before he comes, I just wanted to ask that you all will please go to the Westphalia Christian Community Church's website, to the YouTube page and to Facebook, and take the link for this session and send it out to your friends. Send it out to everyone who's in District 6. So if they're not here, they can still hear this. So please go on our Facebook page, our YouTube page, and do a blast to everyone you know who plans on voting or who you want to vote. That's what we ask of you tonight. Thank you.
Brother Spencer, I'm going to make this real quick. I understand you have a sore throat. This might, in this card, might take out your throat, but it won't give you a hospital visit. But thank you so much for your service.
Oh, thank you, sir. Appreciate
You're
it.
so welcome.
Appreciate it.
And to our
Reverend, my throat was a little sore too.
okay, well, I got something for you too. Watch this. Watch this. It may not be as much, but it's going to be something. And to to all of you, the community, we're so glad that you're here tonight. For those of you who don't know me, I believe in level grounds, and may the best person in the race win. And we have two wonderful candidates, so I don't have a favorite in here. I just want the best one to win, and we want to make every effort for that to happen. Before I get to that, it's always protocol to acknowledge a bishop when he's in the house. And Bishop, I want to honor your presence, but I know you may have an invested stake in this, so I'm going to just say hello to you. But the council at large said, take courage and bring unity. I was really disturbed by what took place down the street. And so I'm going to take courage, and I'm going to do something that I would normally not do. But because of your commitment to us, we have a larger audience of District 6. And if you so desire, I'm going to offer you each at least 5 minutes on a Sunday morning to address the district from this pulpit on a Sunday morning. You can see Reverend Banks set that schedule up. And when you get home, you'll probably say, man, I wish I had said this. I wish I had said this. So we're going to give you 5 minutes. I don't know how, just we're going to make it work so we can balance out the scale so people who did not get the privilege to hear your voice will make sure they get a chance to hear it. Is that good? All right. Thank you very much. Sister Sweat, you mentioned her. What did you mention about her? She's not on the...
She's not on the ballot for the primary. She's running as an independent, and that she has to work for signatures to get on the ballot, unlike the rest of us. And I think that she should be allowed to be on the ballot so that people have the opportunity to vote for her.
And I want you to see her because she could have been down the street, but she chose to be here with this district. And I want to acknowledge her presence tonight. And she does have a table in the back. And it's just so good to see her. And so we're going to ask you, where your heart leads you. You want to say good evening? Can you do it in 90 seconds? Okay, I'm going to count you in. Go.
Good evening, everyone. Yes, I am Tanya Sweat. I'm only here to ask for your permission to run on the ballot. If you sign my petition and I make that minimum number, you'll see me in November, not June. Yeah, everybody deserves a choice, and I need your help to make sure the electorate has a choice in November. And if you bless me enough to choose me to be your next county executive, I'm going to work to make this county what each and every one of us know and want it to be.
Thank you so much. I love you. Amen. Let us receive the benediction. We can stand to our feet. And thank you again so much. Thank you so much. Thank you all. Let's pray. Gracious God, we thank you for the vision that was given to our very own Reverend Banks and realize the importance of this election, more so than many of them in the past that we have experienced. God, I thank you for these candidates who care enough for the community to come out and hear questions and give vision. And I thank you for the community that cared enough to come out and hear and to ask questions and to show their confidence in both of these who have stood strong and stood firm and shall continue to stand. I pray for the race that they run, oh God. I pray that the best one wins. I pray, oh God, that doors will open up just because of their courage and their willingness to say, here I am to be a servant leader. God, I pray now as we leave this place that you cover us with your grace and mercy. Give us traveling mercy. And God, if it be in our heart, we give you all honor and glory even before we get there. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Have a good night.